Hi guys.
Oh, finally! I just had the most disgusting experience of my life.
Really, what happened?
Yeah, I was babysitting for this kid, right? And he wears cloth nappies, and you actually have to scrape the poo out of the nappy into the toilet. It was so disgusting.
Yuck, yeah. Once when I was a kid, I was having a bath with my cousin, and he did a big poo in the bath, and then his mum had to come in, and she had a spoon, and she had to squash the poo down the plug hole with a spoon.
One time when I was in Europe, I went to Greece, and they actually don't flush any of their paper down the toilet. So after you do your business, you have to stick your used toilet paper in a bin with everyone else's used toilet paper.
Really?
Yeah.
What makes you think about all the stuff we put down the toilet?
Yeah.
Yeah, where does it go?
I wonder what celebrity New Zealand comedy writer Dave Armstrong would say.
Follow that turd!
So the wastewater arrives here and goes through a series of ponds where the solid material
Biosolids.
are separated out and the water is exposed to sunlight and air and bacteria and gets cleaner and cleaner.
We're trying to take as much out of the wastewater system to make the wastewater cleaner. So we take all of the biosolids out, and by the time it gets over into those ponds over there, it's really clean. 200 million litres a day goes through this plant and goes out into the Pacific Ocean. But that's clean water. It's low nutrients and 99.99% pathogen free.
Right, because you don't want the excess nutrients causing algae to grow.
And you don't want pathogens running around freely.
So when the biosolids are separated out, they go into that digester where the bacteria eat away at them. So it gets less pathogenic and comes out as this black sludge.
Cool, and then it gets made into solids and you take it to the forest and you put it down. What do you hope to get from all of this in the end?
Okay, the biosolids is very nutrient rich in nitrogen, and so we're putting it on the forest because trees like nitrogen. Nitrogen is the green leafy stuff in the trees, well it's expressed as that, and they will take up the nitrogen over time and grow. So we're hoping that the trees that have the biosolids will grow more than the ones that don't.
In addition to that, it's also changing our perception of it as waste, seeing it as something that could lead on to something else rather than something that needs to be buried or disposed of somehow.
So how much waste do we make?
Well, we make of the biosolid type waste 25 tonnes per day.
Each?
No, that's for the whole of Christchurch.
Oh, Christchurch.
And then
I was going to say,
Holy moly, are you kidding me?
you spend all your day on the toilet. And then some.
but every year in Christchurch we produce about 70 kilos per person.
That sounds like a huge amount.
It certainly is, and there it is in the wheelbarrow behind you, so that's the yearly amount that we produce.
Holy moly.
And it's got to go somewhere, so this is the problem we have. Where does it go?
What are you gonna get?
The hottest one.
So
Can I touch it?
I think it's a nice. So what are you going to do with your old cell phone?
Smash it into smithereens because of all the strife it's caused me over these years.
Well, what will you do once you've smashed it then?
Throw the shards in the rubbish bin.
Well, did you know that I think about 2.5 million of us have cell phones, and
Of New Zealanders.
yeah, and we get new ones every couple of years, so that's a lot of cell phones going in the rubbish. And did you know that you can recycle them?
How?
Yes.
Ellen, why are we here?
Well, we're here to see a methane extraction plant, and methane is one of the byproducts of decomposition in a landfill, and every landfill has methane, and this byproduct can be taken out via a series of wells and used. And in the case of this one here, it can be used to heat a swimming pool, which is quite close. And for that swimming pool, it costs $1 million a year to heat, and this will take that charge down to zero, we hope.
But what's that got to do with biosolids?
There's a lot of human waste in this landfill, but it's used as a cap, so it goes over the top of our daily rubbish that we throw out. So when they collect your rubbish once a week, it comes here, and then they roll over it with different bits of machinery, and then put a clay cap on, and then put the human waste cap on top of that, and then a soil cap on top.
So the biosolid and clay contain the rubbish and trap the methane so it can be piped out. And the bacteria in the biosolids helps the rubbish to decompose. Ingenious.
So most of this gets mixed with sawdust and becomes part of the cap, and the rest gets worked on by flies and fungi and bacteria until it's all in a good state for the trees.
The idea is that if you apply biosolids on the ground, these trees can recycle it in the top 20 centimetres of the soil, so it doesn't get the opportunity to go down through the soil and become a problem or leach out.
So these trees are sort of helping to clean up the waste, clean up the biosolids from the worst things that are in it?
They certainly are. It's called phytoremediation, which is the way plants clean up the soil, and so they do it very well.
Trees take pretty much everything that we consider to be bad pollution, like carbon dioxide, and they turn that into oxygen, and they're taking up the waste from the ground too. I mean, is there anything trees can't do? Nature's cleaner.
Nature's cleaner, yeah.
All you have to do is put your cell phone in an envelope and you address it to Vodafone and send it free of charge.
And then they recycle the pieces.
Yeah. Even if it's telecom, doesn't matter.
That's lovely.
I know, I think you should do that.
Cheers to
Cheers.
that.
And in England, scientists have come up with a biodegradable plastic phone case with a sunflower seed embedded in it, and when you bury it, a sunflower grows. That's so cool!
Hi!
Hi Chelsea, I brought you some old cell phones.
What I've got today is some examples of some animals that we're using as an indicator species to look at the toxicity of biosolids when they're spread on the land environment, because there's a lot of concerns about constituents of biosolids, things that are present in biosolids, because it's not only poo and wee, but it's also things like lots of chemicals, lots of, when we take medicine and things like that, that's when our body excretes that's also present in the biosolids. Things like antibiotics, even all the detergents and things. You think of all the things you put down your drain. So one of the questions that people ask is, well, what are they having any effect when we put it into the environment? So this is where these little critters come in. They're two very important animal species that are present in the soil.
So if the worms are doing well, does that mean that plants will do well in the same biosolids?
Not necessarily, because the sort of plants and worms are so different from each other that just because one is doing well, it doesn't necessarily mean that the other species will do well, which is why it's important when you do sort of these environmental tests that you try and get as many different species as possible, like plants. For example, if there was a water, if there was a river running by, then maybe have some fish in there, maybe some little crawlies, some macroinvertebrates in the water, some worms. So you see what I mean? Because each tells a different story.
So you try and get the wider picture of the effect of the biosolids. That means trees growing well, plants and animals in nearby water doing well, and healthy worms.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between these two types of worms?
This encotraid worm here, actually, they live in the upper layers of the soil, and they actually prefer soils with a lower pH, so it's sort of more an acidic soil, which you find in this type of environment with all the pine needles and stuff. And also these little critters here will eat bacteria and fungi, so they don't actually eat the organic, like they won't actually chomp through this or organic stuff, whereas the worms will.
So what is the scientific name for these worms?
Can you ask me the scientific name for that one? So the scientific name for these ones here is Enchytraeus albitus. And these red worms are Acinia fetida.
Sound like magic come out.
Yeah, sounds like a Harry Potter thing, doesn't it?
So how are the Encinia fetida doing in the test so far?
Yeah, they actually love, if there's enough water around, these things will migrate to the biosolids. A colleague has shown that when they've been out to sites where, where there's a fair bit of moisture around, you may not find them in the soil, they'll all be having a big party in the biosolids. So.
Turd. How'd you go with finding the turd? Mission accomplished.
Christchurch was really, really fun. We learnt so much. They actually take all the waste there that is left over, like all the junk and gunk that they can't process and make into nice clean water and stuff. They turn it into this stuff called biosolids.
It's amazing how much waste one city can produce in a day. It's a huge amount.
And how they're making it into something useful rather than a pain in the ass.
Right, well, it seems I need to go and fertilise some plants.